Live from Los Angeles, this is the Will Cain Show. And right now, back on the East Coast, President Trump is about to sign an executive order officially dismantling the Education Department, sending power back to the states. Today, as we get ready for that event from the White House, we want to dive into the what. What exactly is done by the Department of Education? The why. Why is the administration looking to dismantle the DOE? And how? Like so many other executive orders of the administration, will this one also be challenged and delayed by a federal district judge somewhere in the United States? Let's get into all that with White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security, Advisor Stephen Miller, who joins me now. Stephen, great to see you. Thanks for joining us as we await this event from President Donald Trump. Let's start working through those questions, if we might, together. Why is the administration looking today to issue executive orders to dismantle the Department of Education?
Well, as we know, the Department of Education here in Washington, D.C. is overwhelmingly staffed by radical left Marxist bureaucrats who are in every way hostile to Western civilization, hostile to American interests, and hostile to our founding documents and culture. And so they are using their position and influence inside the Department of Education to try to force agendas like radical gender ideology, like critical race theory, like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all kinds of anti-America curricula and policies on the American people, on our students, on our children. So it's taking away from parents the ability to control and direct the education of their own kids, of their own families. So what we're going to do under President Trump's leadership and direction is to return that authority to the greatest extent possible to the local level where parents can control outcomes, while at the same time making sure that no federal funds are used to support racism, to support gender ideology, or support other ideas and principles that are offensive to the American taxpayer.
All right, now let's talk about the how, Stephen. It would take, by most reports, an act of Congress to abolish the Department of Education. But it's expected that today, through executive orders, you can do much to dismantle the power of the DOE. So how will this affect what you just described? How will this stop what we've seen in the past from the DOE?
Yes, so we've already seen in anticipation of this action, Secretary Linda McMahon announced her plans to lay off half of the bureaucratic workforce here in Washington, D.C. Obviously, those efforts are going to be scaled up, and so a major thing the president has full and complete control over is the federal workforce. Now, you mentioned a district court judge inevitably will try to interfere in that, but the president and the president alone has the authority to lay off federal workers, to decide how many people he needs to execute that mission. Congress has never set, this is an important point, Congress has never set an employment floor for the federal government or for departments of the government like the Department of Education. There's no floor. In other words, you don't have any minimum number of employees you have to have. So a big part of this is just shrinking that workforce down to its core minimal functions, and then working to give those funds over to states and over to communities and over to localities so they can direct how they're spent, but again, with guardrails. No money for racism, no money for men and women's sports, no money for critical race theory or illegal DEI policies. But beyond those guardrails, it's saying you can direct and control the education of your children. And then taking other functions to do with workforce development, to do with, for example, student loans, and considering whether or not those can be better administered by other departments of the federal government. And so we'll analyze and look at those programs, ensure no interruption in any way of any benefit provided to the American people, but ask whether it can be better administered elsewhere, more effective, more timely, more responsive.
I believe, Stephen, we are about 2 minutes away from this executive order signing there at the White House. So I'm going to ask you this final question, which you've already alluded to, and so have I. Like so many other executive orders, I would imagine you expect this to be challenged in court. You expect a ruling from some federal district judge out there. How are you preparing? It seems people are suggesting none of this is a surprise to you or the administration. All of the challenges from these federal district judges across the country, not a surprise. So what is the intended outcome? To arrive at the Supreme Court and do what?
Our objective, one way or another, is to make clear that the district courts of this country do not have the authority to direct the functions of the executive branch, period. we have co-equal branches of government. A district court judge is one of 700 within the district court. And then on top of that is the circuit. And on top of that is the Supreme Court. A district, an individual lone district court judge is not and never could be the co-equal of the President of the United States. And we're also going to establish that each branch of government is not only co-equal, but has different duties. In other words, Congress writes the bills. The president can't show up to Congress and introduce a bill or amend a piece of legislation. Congress can't show up in a courtroom and issue a ruling. A district court judge cannot pretend he sits in the Oval Office. So co-equal also means that they are separate. Each branch has different duties, and no district court judge can assume the duties of the President of the United States. And we are hoping the Supreme Court will provide that clarity. But one way or another, this will be established so that we can regain control of democracy in this country, so Americans can vote for a president, and that president can implement the lawful agenda Americans voted for.
Stephen, is there an overarching victory for you from the Supreme Court, or is this a piecemeal approach that you're describing where each and every one of these preliminary injunctions are struck down by the Supreme Court? In other words, is your hope that the Chief Justice John Roberts and the Supreme Court do something more than say this district judge, Judge Boasberg, for example, cannot stop the administration from deporting illegal criminal aliens? Or is there a more overarching thing you're trying to accomplish, which is no district judge can enjoin any policy from the executive unless it is affirmed at the appellate level or the Supreme Court?
Oh, it's definitely the second one. It is unacceptable. It is, in fact, offensive to and an insult to democracy to keep in place a system where district court judges can order men back into women's prisons, can order diversity, equity, and inclusion back into the federal government, can order Secretary Rubio to resume foreign aid to unfriendly regimes, can order Secretary Noem to return terrorist aliens back to our country, and then we have to individually go through months and months and months of process just to get back to where we started. That is completely unacceptable. There's no presidency then. There's no executive branch. There's no Article 2. There's just tyranny of the district court. No, complete and permanent relief is what this administration seeks. And we have many tools, many tools. We will get there soon, and we will get there one way or another, but we will not live under a judicial tyranny where the craziest, most communist, most lunatic judge who serves at any one point in time gets to assume the powers of the presidency for any length of time.
To be clear, we're still waiting for this executive order signing ceremony to start in there at the White House, and we will go to it as soon as it happens. But I want to follow up a couple of times here with Stephen Miller on something you've described. Just to illustrate your point, Stephen, Chuck Schumer has been bragging, I believe, in the last 24 hours that there have been 275 federal district judge appointees since the Obama administration that he is proudly pointing to as those that are stepping in the way of the agenda of the Trump administration. I believe that illustrates exactly what you're talking about. These appointed federal district judges have the power right now on an individual basis to stop your agenda, the administration's agenda, President Trump's agenda.
Right now, under the current intolerable system, a single district court judge can pick an issue, can pick a cabinet secretary, and declare him or herself to be in charge of that issue and that cabinet secretary for an indefinite period of time. And so think about the work that goes into electing a president. Think about the 8-year battle, Will, before the entire nation that led to Donald Trump taking the oath of office in January of 2025. Think about the 8 years of strife, of debate, of struggle against every single obstacle thrown in President Trump's path so he could put his hand on that Bible and step back into the White House. Compare that to appointing a district court judge, one of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. The idea that a single district court judge can, on any day and any issue, claim the powers of the president on core matters of executive branch policy is legitimately insane. How anyone could defend it is beyond imagination.
From a practical perspective, Stephen, I and everyone watching couldn't help but agree with you that it's ridiculous that an unelected official, in this case a federal district judge, can stop the elected will of the American people. But from a legal perspective, something that you and I both do understand, this is the way it has been done. This is not new to the Trump administration, and this is the way it has been done in America for quite some time. That a federal judge does have the power to enjoin the executive. So if you are looking for some overarching ruling that stops that which has been in our history for quite some time, what indication do you have that you might find success? Chief Justice John Roberts is not one to upset the apple cart. He is an institutionalist, an incrementalist, and this would be a wide sweeping change you're describing. What indication do you have that you have an argument that will land with the Supreme Court of the United States?
Well, I want to reframe that a little bit. What is actually unprecedented, what is actually the big change, what is actually destroying, demolishing indeed, the institution of the judiciary is the flood of nationwide injunctions from district court judges. Up until 2017, nationwide injunctions from a district court judge on a major federal policy were largely unheard of. The injunction spree began under President Trump's first term and has resumed under his second term. The Biden administration had extremely few, if any, major nationwide injunctions, and what few it did had, it effectively ignored. I mean, for example, it lost a case to remain in Mexico, never sent anyone back to Mexico. Lost a case on student loans, never stopped forgiving student loans. It lost a case on ICE being shut down, never reopened ICE. So they suffered a few injunctions, a small handful over the 4 years, and ignored, in effect, every single one of them. There was no hue, there was no cry. The Republican-appointed judges, by and large, exercised extraordinary self-restraint. Not one Republican judge in 4 years stopped Joe Biden from flying illegal aliens into the United States. Not one. Nationwide injunctions only affect Republican presidents, but particularly only affect presidents on the Republican Party who are seeking profound change. So this is entirely a one-sided system. By and large, conservative judges exercise self-restraint and avoid issuing large and sweeping rulings. They try to seek the narrowest kind of relief available to them in the case before them. So this is a, number one, unprecedented. Number two, it only applies really to presidents, in this case just President Trump, who are seeking to fundamentally reform our broken government. Right now, power is concentrated principally in two areas: the unelected bureaucracy and the unelected judiciary. So what President Trump is doing is he's restoring democratic control by putting power back into the hands of the one man, the president, who's elected by the whole American people. So if we want to get back to the way this country was run forever, look, when Eisenhower deported a record number of illegals, it was never even thought that a district court judge anywhere in the country would impede that process. It never even entered the minds of a citizen or a lawyer anywhere in the United States of America the courts could even have a thing to say about it. It was seen as such a fundamental prerogative of the executive. The district court judges are the ones that are realigning and changing government, because the basic deal here is, and I apologize for filibustering, this is so important. This is the basic deal from the system. Is you can elect a Mitt Romney, you can elect a Paul Ryan, you can elect a John McCain, you can elect a George Bush, you can elect a Barack Obama, but because they will all keep the system intact. But if you elect somebody who wants to reform the system in a deep and fundamental way, the bureaucracy will grind you down, the courts will grind you down. We won't let you, the American people, have the change you want. And if John Roberts wants to preserve the integrity of the court system, he cannot let district court judges deny the American people the change they've waited 8 years to finally get after all the struggle we've all lived through.
I think the point of the filibuster, which I thought was very enlightening, is well pointed out. It's well taken that this has been an abuse that has been exacerbated and almost exclusively used against President Trump. And it does get in the way. It does impede the idea, as you point out, of radical change. It's almost impossible to accomplish radical change. The question is whether or not that argument not lands with me or not lands with the audience watching you right now on Fox News, but whether or not that argument lands with the Supreme Court of the United States. And we're watching now, Stephen, by the way, President Trump looks like he's getting ready to walk into this signing ceremony to dismantle the Department of Education. Always enlightening, always a great question, great conversation. Thank you much, Stephen Miller. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.